Hi, I'm Hongwan. Today I'm going to talk about what's Markov Decision Process. What's the target? The target is just to find the best policy. But what's policy? This example. This is grid of size 3 times 4, and there are 12 cells, and each cell represents a state. So a policy is just to map an action to state, and a best policy is just to map the best action to state. Now we assume this is goal state, and it has a reward of 2. This is best state. It has a reward of -2, and for other states, we assume they will have a value of -1. And for this state, the best action is definitely right. Why? Because among these 4 actions, only the right action will lead it directly to the goal state, and it will maximize the future reward sum. But what's index bias? The biggest one is memorylessness, which means future state doesn't depend on any state in the past. It only depends on current state. This is formula. We see these two sides, and in this side, we can see S1, S2, S3 to ST-1 exist on this side, but it doesn't exist on this side, which means from S1 to ST-1 doesn't decide ST plus 1. So it means the future state ST plus 1 is not dependent on state from S1 to ST-1. And another index assumption is that in the traditional MDP, it only assumes single agent, so there's no cooperation and there's no computation. What's the relationship among MDP and other approaches? So first of all, MDP is model based on policy RL algorithm. What's model based vs model free? For model based one, it will has a transition probability and reward function, but model free one doesn't have. And what's on policy vs off policy strategies? For on policy, which means the policy used by the exploration environment and the policy to be updated are the same one. But for off policy, these two are different. For hyperparameters, for a state, for example, there is a grid of size 4 times 4. So there will be 16 cells, and each cell is a state. What's probability? Transition probability. For example, when I'm in on a state, I choose the right action, but it doesn't necessarily mean I will go to the state on the right side. I will still probably go to the up, down, or left, or even stay in the original state. For also, what's actions? We assume for each state, it has 4 actions, left, right, up, down. It can be 8 if you can go diagonally. What's reward function? Reward function means short-term benefit of this state. There's another concept called value, which means the long-term desirability of the state. These two are different. And what's the discounting factor? It only exists in the policy re-evaluation step. When we are re-evaluating a state, a higher discounting factor means we focus more on the future benefit instead of the short-term benefit. So what's the algorithm? There are 2 steps. One is to initialize. The second one is called policy iteration. This step will keep iterating until the algorithm converges, and it has 2 sub-steps. One is called policy evaluation, another one is called policy improvement. So how to initialize? First, we just give all the state an initial value of 0. So 0 means long-term desirability of the state, and the initial value is 0. And we assign a random action to each state, which means we give it a random policy first. For example, if we see this state, left action is definitely not the best action for this state. The best action is definitely right, but since it is random, so it is reasonable. And also, we have to give the goal state a high reward and give a bad state a low reward. Thus, it will lead us to the goal state instead of a bad state. So the first step, policy evaluation of policy iteration, it just assign a new value to each state. And the function used to reevaluate the value is called Bellman equation. This is Bellman equation, and this represents the value of state S at step 0 n plus 1. This is immediate reward. This is discounting factor. This is a long-term benefit. And I'm going to show an example. So example is about the state 6. For the new value of state 6, this is the reward, immediate reward of state 6, which is minus 0.04 plus 0.8. Why 0.8? This is the transition probability. As we can see, the current action mapped to state 6 is done. So when we are at state 6 and we choose the action of done, we have 80% probability to go to the down state. So it's 0.8 times value of state 10. We have 10% probability to go to the right state, which is state 7. So 0.1 times value of 7. And we also have 10% probability to stay at state 6. So that's the reason why we add 0.1 times value of state 6. The second substep is called policy improvement. It's just reassign a value to each state. So here example. We still take state 6 as example. If we choose action app, it has 80% probability to go to the app state, which is state 2. So 0.8 times value of 2 and 10% probability to go to remain at state 6. So that's reason 0.1 times value of 6 and also 10% probability to go to the right state, which is state 7. So 0.1 times the value of state 7. And we get the evaluation of the action app. After we get all these 4 evaluation for each action, we choose highest one. In this case, is obvious app, right? And we change the original action, which is done, to the new action, which is app. And this is overall. This is initial one. We can see the initial value mapped to each state is 0. And then we update each state's value, and we update each state action, value, action, and we reach the best policy, which means every state is mapped with a best action. So what's the limitation? First, the memorylessness assumption of MDP might not be right, which means we are actually wasting all the previous information from the state 0 to state t-1. And also, traditional MDP only assume a single agent, but there are probably 2 or more, and there will be cooperation, commutation. And also, as the number of state of action increase, there will be more computing problem. And for example, in our case, we only assume 4 action for each state. So when we are updating the action map to each state, we only need to calculate 4 action. But if there are 5, 6, 7, 8, there will be more. About the computation application scenario, so it is actually a sum harvesting problem. So we are actually maximizing the total reward. There are 4 states in total, which means empty population, low population, medium population, and high population for summer, action, fish or not to fish. And for the immediate reward, minus 200 represent the immediate rewards of being the empty state. 5 correspond to the low population. 50 correspond to the medium population. 100 correspond to the high population. And for the transition probability, for example, I'm in the high population state. I choose to fish. If I choose to fish, there are 90% probability to go to the medium state. There are 10% probability to remain at high state. The same for empty. If I am in the state of empty population, if I choose not to fish, there's a 90% probability to switch to the low state, and there also a 10% probability to remain at the state empty. And our target is just to maximize the future reward sum. So it generates trade-off. And this is the reference for this presentation. Thank you guys for watching. Have a good day.